Hello everyone, I am Arundhati. Welcome to this session in my series of videos on spoken English. While we all love to speak English effectively and effortlessly, we all are frightened when it comes to making a start. I was thinking of all possible topics to start with, and one thing that I feel absolutely essential in the world of conversational English is that of introductions. While we all are prepared for complex technical situations at education and work, such as describing a complex diagram or a mechanism or some process, when it comes to introducing ourselves, it might be a bit uncomfortable, awkward, and we might feel absolutely petrified. This might be because sometimes we are not sure about what to include in the introduction, and at other times we're not sure how to say it. So, let's look at both these aspects now. For your introduction to be effective, it has to be interesting and brief. Easily said than done. It can be possible to make your information interesting and make a long-lasting impression if you just keep it interesting with the kind of information that you're providing. And when I say brief, don't make it longer than 5 sentences. Right? Now, how to make it interesting? See, each one of us is unique, and this uniqueness has to be reflected in introductions. So how are you different from others, and how can you make a mark? Think about all the possible ways. Now, in a formal introduction, you could mention details such as your name, the place you come from, your education, the certifications or registrations that you have, right? Because in this competitive world, if you want to have an edge over others, you need to give information about your professional registrations and what makes you suitable, the skills and the abilities that you bring to work. So you could include those in your introductions, and where you're working, obviously, and then the hobbies that you hold, the activities that you deliberately do. In formal interviews, it is always better to include your hobbies that are relevant to the job that you have applied for. This makes you appear a little bit more focused, and it is always helpful to sound more professional. So these kind of hobbies make you sound more suitable for work. When it comes to interests, say information that could make you more personable, likable, and that demonstrate the fact that you're sociable. Because at the end of the day, these recruiters and the interviewers are not just recruiting a bunch of certificates, but a person whom they want to spend 9 to 5 with, or perhaps more than that if you're working overtime. Okay, so they will be genuinely interested in your interests. Okay, if these are quite likable, and that put you in positive light. Basically, you don't want to scare them, right? And when it comes to informal situations, you could start off using a lot of icebreakers, basically, because especially when you're meeting strangers and people for the first time, you want to sound less intrusive and less offensive. So this could be made possible by talking about a situation that you're in. So if you're at work, you've met at work, so you could say, oh, it's been a long day. Or if you're just starting work, you could say, oh, it's going to be exciting. And you could also talk about saying, it's lovely weather, it's hot. Or you could also say, oh, it's cold today. Now, you could also talk about transport, saying that I guess the bus or train is going to be late today, or hope it's going to be on time today, or oh, there are not many buses today. Or you could say, I'm contemplating taking a taxi, something like that, or I'm thinking of taking a taxi, I'm not sure. So if it is food, you could also talk about food, like especially when you're at a party, you could say, oh, great food, I love the music. Or you could also say someone like, a gentle nudge kind of thing. You can say, having fun. And common interests, or depending on the situation, if you both are in same situation, for example, if you're caught at a tube station or railway station, the train is late, you could say, oh, it's going to be a long day then. Okay, or after a meeting, you've attended a conference and you're walking along with this another person from another company. You could say, oh, it was quite enlightening. Or you could also say, oh, it was quite informative. I could take that stuff home, and that was very useful. It's been very interesting and I got to learn a lot. And if you're at a show or an event, you could say, oh, it's very interesting, it's awesome, it's amazing. Then you can say, by the way, I'm Arundhati, and you wait for their reply. Okay, you could also shake hands if possible and see how they're reacting. If they're not interested and if they're giving very short answers, don't annoy them too much. Or you could also make it a little bit more friendly by keeping it less personal. You could talk about, if you get a moment, you could also talk about your interests. You could say, oh, I like music, if it's not too loud. Or you could say, if you're at a restaurant, and you could say like, I love Indian, it's just absolutely irresistible. But obviously, never ever ask too many personal questions. You could give yours. You can say, I have a brother who lives in Sydney and he's absolutely loving it. He loves living in Sydney. And you could ask them about their hobbies or the places that they would like to visit and the kind of music that they enjoy, but always try to keep it a little bit less personal. Okay, so we have learned what to include in formal and informal introductions. Now let's look at the structure or the language itself. Okay, so basically, I'm sure most of you are familiar with basic grammar, that is the tenses. So mostly we use the simple present for introductions. So the simple present comes with be form helping verbs, which are am, is and are. So the be form verbs are nothing but that tell you the state or the position or the identity or the feelings or the situation. So let's have some examples. So you say I am. Okay, you are. In contraction, this becomes your. When you're actually speaking, the contraction becomes your. And we are becomes we are. They are becomes they are. So for third person singular, you use he is, which becomes his. She is becomes she is. It is becomes it is. So for example, you can say, I am Arundhati. You are my students. We are a team. They are my colleagues. He is my brother. She is my sister. It's my pet dog. Okay, and as I said, you could also use the be form verbs to talk about your position. I am a teacher. Okay, you could also talk about your feelings. You could also say, I am fond of. I am happy. Right? Now with the verbs, the basic verbs that you use in simple present are in their base form, meaning they don't have any helping verbs before, or they don't have any suffixes like ed or ing at the end. They just come in their base form. So I live, I work, I enjoy, I love. Okay, these are some of the common verbs that you could come across in your introductions. And sometimes you could also use present continuous and present perfect tenses also. So present continuous is when you use stuff like I am working, or I have worked, I have lived, etc. Okay, so let's look at the formal introductions now with the language that we have learned. So with name, you can say I am Arundhati, or my name is Arundhati. With place, you could say I am from Warangal, or I am a native of Warangal, or I come from Warangal. We could also say I belong to Warangal. Regarding education, you can say I am a master's in English, or I have recently finished my MA in English. I did my master's in English from Kakatiya University. You could use any of these sentences. When you talk about certifications or the skills that are required for that particular work, you can also say, for example, I am a Cambridge certified English trainer. With the present work or the job that you're doing, you can say, I am an English trainer at the Edumatics group, or currently I'm working as an English trainer at the Edumatics group, or I have been working at the Edumatics group as an English trainer for 5 years. Okay, you could also include information about your hobbies, and you could use verbs like I love, I like, I enjoy. So you can say, I like making educational or learning videos for my students. Or you could say, I like writing articles for magazines. When it comes to interest, you could include interests that make you sound very interesting, sociable. So you could use words like, I also prefer reading and listening to music. Or, when I get time, I like to sing. That is for your formal situations. So let's put all of it together and see how it sounds. Hello, I'm Arundhati and I'm from Warangal. I'm a master's in English and I'm also a Cambridge certified English trainer. At present, I'm working as an English trainer at the Edumatics group. I love making educational videos for my students and I like writing articles for magazines. When I get time, I like to sing and also listen to music. When it comes to informal situations, you could use icebreakers, especially when you're meeting strangers. These are less intrusive and less offensive. A very interesting way of striking a conversation with a stranger. It's often safe to talk about weather. They say famously in UK, work and weather are the safest topics for conversation. So you could talk about weather saying, it's lovely weather, or it's hot, or it's cold, oh, it's freezing, or it's pouring down. When it is work, you could say, oh, it's been a long day, or it's going to be exciting today. You could also think of talking about transport, especially when you both are waiting for, some same mode of transport, like you're at the train station and you're waiting for a train. You could say, guess the train is going to be late. Or if it is a bus, you could say, oh, there are not many buses today. Guess there is a strike going on. Or you could also say, oh, thankfully the bus is going to be on time today. Or, oh, it's going to be late. I might take the taxi. Apart from this, you could also talk about common interest depending on the situation. Okay? And when it comes to food, you can say, oh, I love this food at a restaurant, or it's just absolutely irresistible or delicious, wonderful food. When you're at a party, especially, that is where you make a lot of friends, social situation. So you could talk about, great food. Or you can say, I love this music. Or you could say, having fun. Do you like a drink? Something like that. And then, if it is a conference, imagine most of the people attend conferences, and that is where you meet people from other organizations. And you could say, it was quite enlightening or informative. Or it's been very interesting. I got to learn a lot. What about you? Or if it is a show or an event, you could say, oh, it was amazing, interesting, or it's awesome. And then you could add your introduction saying, by the way, I'm Arundhati, and you? And then you can just extend your hand to shake or just wait for their response. And if they're giving too many small, very one-word answers, and if you see they're not very interested in your conversation, you can keep it less personal, okay? You can give your information, but you just try to keep it less personal. You could say, I'm from Warangal. I have one brother who is living in Sydney, and he's absolutely enjoying it. But depending on the situation, you can or cannot ask personal details. But again, as I said, music and weather are something that's very common. You can talk about music. Oh, I like music. If it's not too loud. What about you? What kind of music do you enjoy? You could ask. You could say, my hobbies are, as I said, reading a lot, listening to music, and singing. I love to sing. And what about you? What are you interested in? You could talk about that. And I like this place, but I also like to visit the northern part of India, especially because the southern part is very hot. So I want to go to the hill stations there to enjoy the weather. What kind of weather and what kind of holidaying would you like? Do you like? You could ask anything like that. Okay, so these are some of the ways to introduce yourselves in formal and informal situations. Hope you found this video useful. If you like it, please hit the like button and do share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.